Today in the evening, onto our left-hand side is the dinner event. The dinner event concludes of a 3-course meal. This is a fundraising event. The fundraising event will give us the money and will give us the financial needs that are required to build the schools in Gaza, to launch our orphan appeal. The orphans, they are coming from Palestine. People will be sponsoring an orphan for a monthly cause. Those who want to get involved can do so through IQRA, through Al-Khair Foundation. And tonight we will be showing the event. We can see that this poster here, the 1949, May 14th May 1940, the last British High Commissioner left Palestine, and David Ben-Gurion proclaimed that the independence of the State of Israel. This poster here is when Zionism was born. Zionism was born in the 1917. The roots of the Palestine problem date back to the 19th century, when Palestine was part of the Ottoman Empire. It was that Jewish nationalism called Zionism developed in Europe. The father of political Zionism was the Otto-Hungarian Jew, Theodor Herzl. At first, the Zionism Congress in 1897 in Basel, not only was the idea of the Zionism established on a board basis, but institutions were also created that were intended to stay for a long time. As we look into the history of Palestine, we see that when Palestine was first an own state, when it was its own state, it was a very big state. Israel has started to close down the borders. It's becoming very, very tight, and this is the reason that today there is a lot of hardship.
Our next distinguished speaker is Norman Finkelstein, an American political scientist, professor and author. His primary fields of research are the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the politics of the Holocaust, motivated by the experience of his parents, who were Jewish Holocaust survivors. He is a PhD in political science from Princeton University, and he is the author of 10 books which have been translated into 50 foreign editions. I have many books by Norman myself, signed by him in actual fact, on my shelf. You might know Norman Finkelstein has already raised over $100,000 for his crowdfunding campaign with Byline. And I spoke to him earlier this evening. I'm reminding you that you can still donate to this campaign, and the money will be used for the Al-Awada Hospital in Gaza, and I would encourage you to do that. I last heard Norman Finkelstein speak in Glasgow 2 or 3 years ago by an organisation, Al-Khair Foundation, who have known for their work on Palestine. I think many of you were there where Norman spoke, and I can honestly say, Norman, that it is one of the few meetings these days, as we've discussed, where the audience were truly captivated and listened for around 2.5 hours, which is very unusual these days, listening to what you have to say and how you put it. So we are absolutely privileged and delighted to ask you to come here, up to the platform, and speak with us for the next 30 or 40 minutes or so. Thank you very much.
I met some very special people here in my very brief stay, but still memories. I met a psychiatrist and a social worker, both of whom told me I looked terrible. And I suspect that was a Zionist psychological attack to try to shatter my self-esteem. It didn't work. But most importantly, I met 2 wonderful young people, and I'll walk away with their memories, each of them just for a moment, but at my point in life, you can figure out a person very quickly and see who's worthy of being remembered. So first of all, there's Sam, who I'd like to stand up so people can meet him. And I know that Sam is destined for greatness, so I want to be able to partake of that. Remember to remember me when you make it. And also Akhlaq, who I only spoke to for 2 minutes, but that was quite enough. As you can see, he refuses to get up. I assumed that he was of Pakistani descent, and being of my assumption Pakistani descent, I asked, of course, you're going to be a doctor. Everybody agrees, there's no dispute whatsoever. Everybody agrees that Hamas had one bottom line demand. Meet this demand and the rocket attacks will cease. There's no dispute. The demand was end the blockade of Gaza, lift the siege of Gaza. That was their demand from July 8th. End the siege, lift the blockade, no more Hamas rocket attacks. It's over. Now, the question is, was that a legitimate demand? Forget about moral legitimacy. Let's talk about legal legitimacy, the law, international law. Take the UN Human Rights Council report on the attack on Gaza. I said, and I repeat, it was a dreadful report. It was a travesty. However, at the end of the report, it states, under international law, the blockade of Gaza has to be lifted, and I'm quoting them, has to be lifted immediately and unconditionally. Immediately and unconditionally. So, if Israel wanted the rocket attacks to stop, all it had to do was meet its legal obligation under the law. Lift the blockade immediately and unconditionally. So there was no justification from the point of view of the law of self-defense, because self-defense only comes into play when you have exhausted all diplomatic options. They had a diplomatic option, end the blockade. That's the law. There was no longer any tunnel economy between Gaza and Egypt. Well, why do I mention it? The answer is obvious. Did Egypt have to attack Gaza to terminate the tunnel economy? They did it from their side of the border. You might not like the way they did it, and I don't like the way they did it because they displaced thousands of civilians along the Egyptian side of the border, but on the Sinai side of the border. But there was a way to do it. It didn't require bombarding, devastating, shattering, and destroying Gaza. Israel claims to have destroyed 32 tunnels that went from Gaza into Israel. Of those 32, no, they destroyed 32 tunnels. Of those 32, only 12 actually went under the border from Gaza to Israel. 12. But there's much more to it. There's much more to it. Because even if you read the UN report on Gaza, which I repeat for the third time, it's a travesty, they make the important point: the tunnels, the militants who infiltrated Israel, they never, not once, never targeted civilians. When they exited from the tunnels, they engaged in armed exchanges with the Israeli military. All the talk about terror tunnels, under living rooms, beside kibbutzim, is all a lie. So it requires a political solution, and everybody understands that. But in the interim, you do what you can, of course. But it requires a political solution, and what needs to be done in addition to talking about practical, day-to-day ways to lessen the suffering of the people of Gaza is to work together to figure out politically how, first and foremost, politically, how to end that illegal and immoral siege of Gaza, which, as everybody agrees, has to be lifted immediately and unconditionally. And the challenge, in my opinion, is how do we use the statements that are made by the UN Human Rights Council, by Amnesty International, which also said in its last report, the blockade of Gaza has to be lifted immediately and unconditionally. How do we use those statements to build the kind of political movement that can finally at least end that inhuman and illegal siege, inhuman, illegal, and immoral siege of Gaza? Thank you.
Tonight we're going to be raising sort of awareness of Al-Khair by spreading this to all of my family, all my second cousins. Everyone I know is going to get an Al-Khair bag, inshallah.
As the ambassador said, you know, the Scottish people are friends of Palestine, and we here at the SNP Friends of Palestine will do all that we can to support the Palestinian people in any way that we can.
The future generation that's going to be dealing with this crisis in Gaza, it's really important that we remember the people of Gaza, not just during the wars that Israel inflicts, but during their times when the media are quiet.
I'm all for it. I mean, I was looking at the brochure and I read the brochure and it looked very interesting. There's certainly a lot of good areas that you are touching on, and not only just touching on, actually implementing the actions that are required for the Gazian people.
Guys, I just wanted to ask you, you are from which organisation?
SNP Friends of Palestine.
People across communities coming together in unity.
Collectively, we can work together, all of us, to help the people of Palestine. There is an outcome, and that outcome is peace, but it's also construction, education, and yeah, we can work together, all of us collectively, and to help the people of Palestine.
Such a very good way of showing what it really is all about. We have to share what we have with people who are suffering. We have to give so much more than we have been able to do today for creating a better place for Palestinians.
That needs to be done in following on from today, continuing the conversations that we've had, maintaining those contacts and beginning to bring more people into the conversation so that the skills of the people in Gaza can be utilized more widely, that people can find employment and begin to build up networks between people in Scotland and the people in Gaza, to be directed and led by the needs and aspirations of people there, and find ways that we can work together.
I work in cultural resistance within Palestine because I'm in the arts industry here and in theatre, and I've seen how stories really help with people to reflect on things that are happening and also to spread messages. And I think with Palestine, it's a message that needs to be spread, and that can be done through cultural resistance from Palestinian artists and not just the UK artists that we have here in the UK.
Great pleasure to ask Professor Manuel, Ambassador Hassassian, to come and speak to us. A warm welcome, please, Ambassador Hassassian.
We have to understand one basic reality, that the Palestinian problem is not a human problem or a humanitarian problem. The Palestinian problem is not an economic problem. The Palestinian problem is a political problem. That's why it needs a political solution. We have the right, like all nations in the world, to self-determination. Every single people on this planet is practicing that sacred right of self-determination, except the Palestinian people. And I don't want to brag that we are the most educated in the Middle East, and that we have managed to build many countries in the Middle East. However, we have never been given the chance to continue in building our country. Why? Because the continuation of building colonies, ladies and gentlemen, those are not settlements, those are colonies. Settlers come and go, but the colonies stay. And to give you one simple statistic, currently today, 2,000 dunams have been confiscated in the Crimson area in Beit Jala to build the apartheid wall. And Israel claims that this is the land of Israel. And we have been convinced that the Oslo Agreement is going to end up in having an independent Palestinian state over the borders of 1967. Today, if you go to Palestine, there is no more room left for the Palestinians. More than 65% of the West Bank is still under Israeli control. 90% of the population of the Palestinians are in less than 3% of the land. Israeli colonies comprise 2% of the land with 60% built up area, which means that Israel controls not only the 2%, but the 60% of the built up areas. My eyes are always full of tears when I still see my people divided between Hamas and Fatah. I think unity starts at home. As we say, charity starts at home. And let us not keep on blaming occupation, America, Europe for this disunity. We are the cause of this disunity. I think we have to be united, and by being united, we can put our options, and the Palestinians have a lot of options. We will continue fighting until we gain our independence. Steadfastness is not through military arms. We could be steadfasting by improving our education, our health system, by building our infrastructure. That's how we can resist occupation. There isn't a single country in the world have continued to be living under occupation. We say it's a matter of time. Time is always on the side of the people who are determined to get their independence and to get their freedom. And in order for us to achieve that goal, we have to be united. And I'm proud to come from a university that had its emblem in Latin, in Divisa Manent, which means united we stand and divided we fall.
The very knowledgeable speaker is like Dr. Noman and Ibrahim were, you know, like they gave us facts which kind of opened our eyes to what's happening, and I will remember that and stand for the people in Gaza.
It's been a great 4 workshops today, mashallah. You know, it's well organized as well. You know, the emergency services, the health services, the educations, and you know, I'm hoping is out of those the outcome for the people of Gaza, who actually the people are paying the price, the people are suffering, to have high impact. And I'm sure as Imam Qasim, the chair of Al-Khair Foundation today has mentioned, they donated $1 million to education through the UNRWA. I hope they will carry on more stuff to Gaza and more donations to cover health and medical and emergency services as well. So we're hoping that Al-Khair will do more as they always do.
They can do a lot for Gaza. It's not a matter of just, you know, moral support, but they can contribute, because, you know, the steadfastness of the people of Gaza is the symbol of resistance and eventually the symbol for ending this blockade. We have to keep on telling the international community that 7 years of blockade of 1.8 million Palestinians living in such a congested territory like Gaza is something against humanity. And our view basically and the message should always be that we support the Gazan people, we support the Palestinians in their quest for freedom, and we hope that occupation one day will end.
A truthful presentation because of the precision of the numbers and the facts that he gave. For example, he mentioned that the school that he established is now ranked number 35 out of 7,000 or more schools. When somebody gives an exact number like 35, you know they're telling the truth. So it was a very impressive display of achievement, but also persistence to start from nothing and to achieve so much.
It is a concern for humanity. And today we have seen, mashallah, it's amazing. I was very pleased with it, that we had more English community than Indian Pakistani community. So there were more non-Muslims in today's event. And that shows that even they are basically united and they are really, really concerned about it. So we create as much awareness of this. You will be surprised that when you speak to your neighbors, they wouldn't know much about Palestine. I mean, if you think that you know a lot, then what about myself, who used to think that I'm working on Gaza issue day and night for past many years and so on. Still, despite that, I've learned quite many new things today. I've picked up quite a lot, in terms of their situation and their calamities and the solution and so on. We have picked up many, many new ideas. So try to find out more and try to study and try to pass the message to others, inshallah. That's one. Second one, of course, the financial contribution. Alhamdulillah, people in past have donated to Al-Khair Foundation for Gaza greatly. Now we have taken responsibility of education of children in Gaza. We have built partnership with the United Nations body UNRWA, UNWRA. We have already transferred £500,000 to them with condition exactly highlighting how much can be you can say spent on admin costs or on traveling, on logistics. Whatever we are transferring to UNWRA, 90% of that have to be spent on the education of the children. So you can see that there is only 10% of the amount which can be used for logistics and admin cost and so on. So we are basically, you can say, dictating the terms of our donation with them. So it's not that the way normally their admin costs are, similarly it will be here. No, in our funding to them, maximum amount of donation will be spent on the education of those children. For the first time in almost half a century, Gaza is facing a situation where children will not be receiving education this year. Why? Because international donor community have not supported enough. Many schools have not opened this September. Literally, basically, financially they are not in position to continue. So therefore, it is added responsibility upon our shoulder to take that burden, to share this burden, and literally to sponsor us education of children, sponsor schools and so on. It cost minimum £50,000 to £150,000 to run one school in Gaza. Minimum 50,000 to 150,000. If someone is willing to sponsor one school, that will be fantastic. If you have, inshallah, Allah blessed you, then you can sponsor £50,000 for one school, inshallah. Otherwise, you can give £25,000. £5,000 will be 10%, 10% sponsorship. Or at least try to donate £30 a month or £360 a year for the education of a child in Gaza. Or you can sponsor an orphan, including their education, for £45 a month, £540 a year. I know it's a little high, but you pay what you get what you pay, basically. So here we will be providing excellent, inshallah, level of education, covering basically social subjects, moral subjects, as well as basically core subjects and so on, inshallah. So you can support towards mainly education, towards food program, towards water, towards medical, whatever you like, and whatever amount you can afford, try to donate better than that, inshallah.
And inshallah, an effect will take place very, very soon. Jazakallah for your time. Brothers and sisters, Jazakallah for watching the Al-Khair Foundation 2015 Hope Over Fear Conference. I hope this event has made an impact in your hearts and you can help Al-Khair Foundation take this event forward and put it into action. Jazakallah khair. Rahmatullah.